Hello, and welcome to that Eurovision podcast, Eurovision with a Slice of Life. My name is Rory, and I'm doing pretty well. I'm pretty much just getting on with my job. I'm just having a really good time. And you know what? It's getting close to Christmas time. I'm really enjoying it. I'm waiting for the snow to fall, but I highly doubt that's going to happen anytime soon. But yeah, I'm just really looking forward to getting into this week. So yeah, joining me.
Hi, it's Rosie. I'm one of those people that I like to think that there is this sort of period where it becomes acceptable to do Christmas things, have the decorations up and be playing Christmas music and things like that. But honestly, I've been going around a couple of shops doing some errands the last couple of weekends, and the music's playing and the trees are up and the lights are up and it's getting dark early and it's cold and I'm wearing my big coat and my hat and my gloves. I'm just feeling really festive, I'm not going to lie. I kind of hate myself for it, but honestly, we all need a little bit of joy at this time of year, and I'm very happy to accept that.
Yeah, to be fair, I'm going to be committing sacrilege here, but a couple of weeks before Halloween, me and my housemate watched Love Actually together. So we've kind of jumped the gun a little bit, but we're not feeling that festive though, don't worry.
You guys have jumped the gun. First of all, Tim here, but you do know that there's a Filipino in the chat. And Christmas season begins for us at September 1. So this has been going on for a couple of months now for me. So I've had the tree up. I've had the little Christmas lantern up on my windowsill. But just to catch up, everything's great. Today's been a very busy day for me. I went to Costco and I went to IKEA. So I bought some more Christmas stuff. But I am, as Sister says, I'm very tired, but, replace the I with an exclamation point.
It's Colin here, and I don't blame you guys for getting too excited for Christmas. I put up my Christmas tree yesterday, so even though we still got Thanksgiving here in America, but it's never too early to start. But everything's going good. Haven't done much today, but everything's going well.
Sounds pretty good, yeah. Yeah, honestly, we don't really have Christmas trees like in my, back home I do, but here it's just not really a thing that we do. So I'm looking forward to going back to Ireland for Christmas and just being it's all time to be all snowy. I'm going to live my Enya fantasy essentially. But yeah.
This is my first time doing Christmas in my own house, and I've always gone home for Christmas, and I am going home for Christmas again this year, but I have space to have a Christmas tree now. So I've bought all my first Christmas decorations.
Aww.
And I'm buying my first tree, and it's honestly just amazing. I'm so happy and so excited by it.
Oh, I'm sure it's going to look absolutely beautiful. We need pictures. But yeah, no, so yes, we might as well get things started on this really. So yes, this week we are going to be sort of delving into another country. And, we've been sort of looking at a few Eastern European countries as of recently. So we might as well sort of carry on that sort of tradition. And this week, we're going to be looking at Estonia. If you're listening to this, Estonia is very much in the middle of its quarterfinal stages of Eesti Laul 2021. At the time of recording, we actually haven't heard any of the songs yet, so we can't really go into much detail about them. But we will be obviously going into more detail as time goes on. We'll be having live streams and you can get a bit more of our opinions towards that there. But in general, yes, Estonia has been participating in the Eurovision Song Contest since 1994. They did try to get into the contest in 1993, but then failed to qualify through Kvalifikatias and Mill Street. So unfortunately, we had to wait until 1994 with Sylvie Vreit and Nagu Merelaine. I'm pretty sure I butchered that pronunciation in Estonian, so I'm very, very sorry. And since then, they've pretty much been taking part in every contest with the exception of 1995, which probably was a result of the rules at the time, obviously because the EBU had not worked out that semi-finals were probably a good idea at this point, but alas. They have won the contest on one occasion in 2001 with Tanel Padar, Dave Benton, and 2XL with Everybody, which was very interesting. And it meant that we got to have Tallinn host the following year, which was, again, fantastic. And they got their second best result there as well, finishing in third place. So let's just sort of get things going here. Who are some of your favorites from Estonia's everlasting time at the contest?
I think Estonia's got some absolutely fantastic songs in their past and honestly in their present, and I would very much like to hope in their future as well. Sort of the first two that I want to give a shout out to, which for me is where they really start to find their feet. Yep, they were getting sort of 5th and 8th places before then, but their 1998 and 1999 entries. So 1998 is the well-known to Euro fans Koit Tome with Mere Lapsed. The one thing about this song is that both of the words of the title are English words, so I find it really hard not to call it Mere Lapsed. But Mere Lapsed, Children of the Sea, it's really beautiful. And in the same sort of vein, Evelyn Samuel and Camille with Diamond of Night, which possibly jumped on the folky train a little too late. Eurovision was just starting to come out of that trend at that time. But as a person who is a huge sucker for anything with a good bit of violin and folk influence, it's something I really, really like. More recently, I have to give a shout out to Randiad, even if the lead singer has kind of become a bit of an anti-vaxxer recently, so slightly yikes, doesn't stop the song being absolutely stunning. And there's a reason it sounds just as good today as it did in 2009. Absolutely underrated, the fantastic Malcolm Lincoln and Siren. What a great song that is. It's so charismatic. I love the lyrics. They're really dark, but the lyrics are talking about depression, and it's such a fantastic capture of what depression is to experience. More recently as well, the fantastic Goodbye to Yesterday by Alina Born and Stig Rasta. Just beautiful. So great, so subtle, so emotional, absolutely fantastic. And the final entry I'm going to mention, we're going up until the modern day. Obviously, for someone like me who loves any sort of opera, La Forza, what an incredible performance. What a stunning voice Alina Nechaeva has. And what a great entry from Estonia, something that is absolutely going to go down in Eurovision history, both the song itself and how great the staging of it was.
Well, for me, looking at it, I'm more towards their entries in 2000 onwards, but not discrediting their previous entries prior to that. So like Metalapsid by Koit Toom. But for me, we'll go forward from, let's say, from the earliest. So one of the earliest ones is Saline with Runaway. And it was the definition of the noughties, that song, I think, for me. I remembered where she attended the OGA UK team fan up on Zoom. It was a pandemic. And she told us the story of how actually she got to participate in the Estonian national final, and she had to do everything last minute. And it worked out well for her. I mean, look, she got Estonia's second best result. So it's still a very fun track to listen to, and I do love it. The second one would be in 2012 in Baku, Ot Lepland, Kula. Like, come on, the emotion that he pours into that song, and the fact that he was just standing there alone on the stage, and you know that he just needed his voice, and that was more than enough. And that was like, it's like the emotion that just rushes in every time. And also the year after that, Brigitte with Et Usa Ax Auguse. You wouldn't have known that she was pregnant when she was performing, like heavily pregnant. And you know what? I was actually quite skeptical of this track just because of the fact that it was Estonian. She just scraped the final on this one. and she gave such a good performance, and her voice was so heavenly. Final two would be Rosie already mentioned, Goodbye to Yesterday. The harmonizations between Stig Rasta and Alina Born and the rapport between their lines, you know, it's such an emotion. And that ending where Alina was just the focus and she was just getting teary-eyed. I was like, that's just me. I'm just a sucker for something romantic. And the last one, and based on like the timeline of things, Victor Crone. I like Storm. I like basic stuff. I don't care what you think of me. Storm was amazing. He deserved the final. And I know some people disagree with this very much, but yeah, Victor Crone was the best. And I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back to Eesti Laul. That's all I'll say. But I will give one quick shout out to Geta Gyani though, just because of the fact that even though that was at 2011, it became a TikTok hit like 9 years later. And I could not get that off my For You page.
The Nightcore version was just like, it went massive like soon afterwards, because it was just like the way that it kind of just like became a massive thing. And I love as well, I don't know if any of you were watching Eesti Laul in 2020, but they actually paid tribute to it by actually creating like a little mini like skit in the interval acts for Getoyani, which I thought was amazing for Rockefeller Street. So I think that just goes to show how actually hilarious and long lasting that the actual song was.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring up that one too, because when I first heard it on TikTok, I didn't realize it was from a Eurovision song. And then I realized it was, and I was like, I never knew that because it was everywhere here in America, and people aren't the biggest fan. Not everyone knows about Eurovision, so it was nice to see it getting some action. But if we go a little earlier, I like the 2009 song by Urban Symphony. I think I really like the songs in Estonian. I think it's a really beautiful language to sing in, and I wish they would do it more because it's been a little while. It's been like 7 or 8 years since the last time they had a song in Estonians. I think I'm just a sucker for songs in languages other than English too, but it would be nice. I just think it adds to the contest as a whole. But the 2009 song, Urban Symphony, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, and I'm not, because I'd butcher it, but I like that song a lot. And then 2018, I'll probably bring up 2018 every time I say one of my favorite songs, because it was my first year, but it was a good song. It was a good stage performance. You know, that dress with all the projections on it, I just thought that was magical, and it was one of my favorites that year. It did good, but her voice was also amazing. I mean, I could never, but it was just so good, and I think it did really well too, I believe, but that's probably my favorite one out of all of them. I just love that. Like, I'm not typically into that kind of music, but I don't know, something about her and the song and the stage presence just made me fall in love.
Yeah, I mean, the song itself was fantastic, and you know, Estonia pulled out all of the stops, including the €65,000 dress. Equivalent in pounds and dollars would probably be roughly about maybe £58,000 and maybe about $70,000. So it's a lot. Yeah.
The projection that was
Literally
required. It's like, oh no, we might not be able to do this staging because we don't have the frigging projection, or we don't have enough money, and they wouldn't lend us the money. And like, and then I think it was the venue where the Eesti Laul was like being held. It's like, you know what? Because you always come to us for the final, we'll like support it. And to be fair, though, I was there in person. It was breathtaking. Like, I didn't like the song as much. It was not like my type of song, but if you're judging in Eurovision sense, she ticked all the boxes.
And she got 8th place at the end of the voting as well, which, you know, just goes to show how great it was, really. So in terms of my own sort of favorite, I will say, I mean, 1996, Kalkehal was a little bit of a soft spot for me, just because I love Ivo Lina. He's a fantastic kind of crooner. He's kind of the Engelbert Humperdinck of Estonia, essentially, which is nice. And, you know, he's really lovely, and he's fantastic. And he's gone back to Eesti Laul on several occasions since then. So it's fantastic to see that he's still sort of trucking along. Most of mine sort of are obviously within the 2000s as well. I will give a quick shout out to Everybody, their winning entry, because it's twee and it's nice. However, there is actually a bit of history to it because Dave Benton being a part of the winning thing meant that that was the first time that a Black person had actually won the contest. So, and it had taken, 46 years for something like that to even happen. So again, great to see that he has sort of established a legacy. But my favorite songs are, they kind of form a 9-year streak from Girly Padar, 2007, all the way up to Alina and Stig in 2015. So we're talking Girly Padar, Crazy Radio, Urban Symphony, Malcolm Lincoln, Getayani Art, Birgit, Tanya, and Alina. And I think at this point, this was a time when sort of Estonia was very much underrated because, they have sort of, they created so many different like interesting things. They were like doing something completely different. So, Girly Padar was like really sultry, sensual, sexual song, like pop song. Then you got Crazy Radio, which is a song, but I really loved it. I think I
was
really
it
bought
a
into
song?
it. I would like to think it is. I mean, I must say, the time when they just start to sort of gyrate against the piano really just sealed the deal for me, I must say. And then obviously we've talked about Urban Symphony already. Malcolm Lincoln, again, incredible song, very much underrated. And I think since then it has become a little bit of a cult classic. And so it's good to know that it is getting sort of its redemption. Getayani, I saw in the arena. She was phenomenal. I did like the staging concept as well. Art sounded fantastic as well. We've talked about that. Birgit, again, was such a beautiful performance. And yeah, and then we got to Tanya. And I liked Amazing in the studio, but then in the actual performance, I felt it kind of got let down a little bit because I think this was at the point, I think, when Estonia were kind of just on a streak. So they were just like, oh my God, let's just try everything. And so they kind of had to realize, okay, maybe this is where we need to kind of pare it back a little bit. But she's like,
Tanya.
Huh?
With Tanya, are you sure she wasn't like trying to recreate a certain song? Because I think I'm the only one that was able to hear it.
No, I think that was a big thing that was going on at the time. For those of you who don't know, there were allegations that Tanya had copied. I think it's Euphoria, isn't it? Yeah. And I don't know. I'm pretty sure someone has done like a video essay on it or something like that. So feel free to have a listen to both songs and just let us know what you think about the similarities and the differences between the two. And then, of course, we were talking about Alina and Stig already. So again, fantastic. Since then, though, hasn't really hit the right spot for me. But this is sort of something that is kind of going to feed into my next question, really. But yeah. So obviously, we've had a wide array of different people representing Estonia. However, we've seen a lot of these former participants kind of return to the national selection again and again and again. For example, Koitome did it about 3 times, I think. Saline has done the backing vocals for several songs, both from Sweden and Estonia too. She's been a backing vocalist for them. Sun Tribe had Laura, who would end up going on to represent Estonia in 2017. We've also seen Sandra Nurmsalu from Urban Symphony go back. We've seen Birgit, Tanya, Alina, Stig, Yuri, Laura again. And the most recent participant from Estonia, Uko Suviste, who has tried to go, I think, about 5 or 6 different times. So he's turning into a bit of the Samantha Tina of Estonia, I think. So my question is, do you think that people, like the former participants returning, are doing it because they love Eurovision so much? Or do you think they're doing it purely for the sake of promoting their sort of music?
Think about it. Sweden has Mello, and Estonia has Eesti Laul. And obviously Eesti Laul is such a big platform. So I think it's 2 things. Like, it's just getting your song the greatest exposure that you can. And in this case, Eesti Laul is your biggest stage on getting your song out there. And, you know, the bonus is just getting to Eurovision and performing it to 200 plus million people. So, but then again, that doesn't necessarily stop people like, I want to go for Estonia because I want to go to Eurovision, because you do get some participants that do want to do this for that specific reason. So I think it's a mixture of both, but it just depends who the person is.
Yeah, I'd really like to hope that it is a bit of the former. And honestly, part of my reason for saying that is that I'm not especially familiar with the Estonian music industry outside Eesti Laul. So I'm not really sure what other platforms artists have to get their music out there, and not even really sure what sort of size the Estonian music industry is. If we're getting all of these names crop up again and again and again, are these sort of the core people who form the Estonian music industry, or are there sort of undiscovered acts who haven't quite made it to break out yet? And I feel like that's something that might be quite interesting, given how, I'm sure we're going to get onto this later, but how they've quite significantly expanded the Eesti Laul format this year. Is that going to mean that newer artists who haven't necessarily had the opportunity to perform either at Eesti Laul or at Eurovision before get the opportunity to break through? And I think that might be quite exciting to see.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of with you. I mean, you want them to be doing it so that because they want to go to Eurovision, but I'm sure that's not the main driving factor for everyone. I mean, I'm not going to hold it against anyone for trying to get their name out there and get their music out there. I mean, make those decisions, do whatever you can to help yourself. But I think sometimes you can tell like who wants to do it for Eurovision, because I feel like they just have that kind of desire, and sometimes you can see that through the artist and through how they're performing. So I think if you are trying to go to Eurovision, you can tell, and it's just better for the viewer and just better for really everyone, because I'd want to vote for you if I could tell. I mean, I don't want to vote for someone who isn't there because they want to go to Eurovision, if that makes sense.
And I mean, it's not like Sanremo where you have the option to not go to Eurovision. Like, the thing about Eesti Laul, the prize is going to Eurovision. So by the very nature of entering it and competing it, you're accepting that as the sort of pinnacle of your reward, which in a way I kind of like, because it suggests that Estonia does respect the contest in a way, in the same way that you get with Melodifestivalen or with Festival de Cantau. And yeah, Sanremo is very much like, yeah, you might be able to go to Eurovision, but Sanremo is in itself its own reward. So I feel like the very fact that Eurovision is the grand prize for Eesti Laul means that there has to be some desire to actually want to go by the very nature of you entering.
Yeah, that is very true. And I guess it does go to show that, like, you know, Estonia is a fairly small country. I think the population is only roughly about 1 million people or so. So, you know, there is a fairly small pool, I guess, of Estonian musicians that probably would be so enthralled to go to the contest, or who are, you know, the benefit, I guess, of having Eesti Laul is that you have a mix of these people who are both sort of new and upcoming people, as well as the sort of big juggernauts that we've come to know through Eesti Laul. For example, you know, we've seen Curly come in, and she's been like massive in America now, because like, well, before Eesti Laul, but she took part in Eesti Laul through that. And then as well as that, you also had people coming in from outside as well, like as we've seen with Victor Crone or Lacey J from Eesti Laul 2019. She was from America too. And I guess it's offering a platform to new people, but also furthering the music industry in Estonia, which I guess is the main sort of point of any national selection and the whole sort of ethos of Eurovision in general, because, you know, you're promoting your culture, you're promoting your music industry, and you're allowing more people to be interested in your kind of music scene, essentially, and getting them to know more people. I've got some interesting facts about this upcoming edition of Eesti Laul. So 202 songs were submitted for Eesti Laul 2022, of which 40 will be chosen, or they have been chosen. We just don't know who they are yet. 84 of those songs were in the Estonian language. So there were also songs that were submitted in English. There were also songs submitted in Spanish, French, Italian, and even in imaginary languages as well, and made up languages. Of the singers that were submitted, 7 of them have already represented Estonia at Eurovision. So the trend is sort of continuing, although I do wonder how many people will have come back who have participated in the national selection but haven't made it through to the final, because as we were talking about, there's so many other people that would very easily come to mind that just haven't managed to break the mold yet. So yeah, so as we were saying, Eesti Laul has kind of gone under a little bit of a revamp, I guess you could say, because of the interest and the boost in interest, I guess, in the whole show. Do you think that's a good idea that we are having sort of quarterfinals now that are being held so far ahead of the actual competition? Or do you think maybe actually it was maybe better to keep it as it was?
I don't feel like the problem of Estonia's success is coming from not having enough acts. I feel like the problem is coming from other elements of the format. So on the one hand, I am very happy to embrace the fact that we are going to be getting more songs. Yes, it means I've got even more to listen to and even more to rank, because that's all we do as Eurovision fans. So on the one hand, I am quite excited for that, and hopefully it does give this opportunity for some fresher, newer faces to come through. On the other hand, adding more people isn't going to fix the issue of the goddamn super final, which has been responsible for some questionable selections in the last few years. And I think that some of those choices have possibly not been particularly great in terms of picking the right song for Estonia. And so I feel like without getting rid of that, and I honestly can't remember off the top of my head right now if they've said they have gotten rid of it or if it's staying or if they've ever made any statement about how it's working. Yeah, I feel like that's what needs to change. And there needs to be a new way of looking at how the voting works. Hopefully more artists, more diversity, more songs to choose from, possibly the chance of sending something a little bit riskier, a little bit more interesting, a little bit more innovative. And it is exciting. But yeah, I don't think the number of artists is the problem in and of itself.
For me, I do like the format change because, you've been having the same format for a few years now. So you want to try other ventures to try and innovate the competition. I like the direction. I'm just very, very nervous that we're doing this very early on. And I don't know what the format is. I think it's music videos. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. We don't have a judgment of live vocals. So some songs might not be so good in music videos, but then they redeem themselves on the live vocals. It's kind of a miss shot on some cases. And my concern is, I think it's how long the track's been out there. So had you been doing this, let's say in January, do a Lithuania style version, I'd understand that because it's successive weeks throughout. You're doing this for 4 weeks, having a 2-month break, and then coming back in February to do it again. My concern with that is people might get bored of the song and end up making the wrong choice and you wouldn't realize it. So it's a gamble, but only time would tell for me. It's a good direction, but if they continue with this, I think they might have to do tweaks in successive editions.
Yeah, I definitely agree that there shouldn't be that long break because, it happens all the time where there's a really popular song and then it gets overplayed so much on the radio and then people start hating it. I just think that's a big possibility and it could really hurt the song that would do the best. And it could end up having another choice that isn't a fan favorite or isn't the one that will actually perform well. Because over the past couple of years, I think there have been some better songs in the contest, but they always choose a different one. But I am excited for new artists. Like, I mean, new songs, that's always exciting, but I do worry that it could only cause some people to get more upset with the results. It could only cause more anger by people who their favorite didn't win, but there's so many songs that so many people their favorites will be diverse. And then when it doesn't win, what are they going to do? They're just going to get mad at the format of the contest or just the contest in general.
Well, the problem is that we have seen this before, as we found out through Curly and Coit and Laura. Curly was very much the fan favorite to win in Eesti Laul 2017. And then out of nowhere, Laura and Coit managed to clinch it. And there were allegations that, there were some the phones were lines were like jammed, so some people couldn't vote for Curly or whatever. So it is a possibility that could happen again, essentially. While you guys have been speaking, I've just been doing a little bit of perusing in the rules of Eesti Laul 2022. And for the quarterfinals, they will be judged based on the music videos. They have until tomorrow to submit them to Estonian television. And then the judges will blind judge the music videos, of which then the results will be released. Like, I'm assuming that this is on live TV as well. So perhaps we'll find out, maybe either. If not, well, it could just be a completely random way of doing about it, obviously, because this is the first time that they're doing like quarterfinals. So for all we know, it could just be something completely different. And then, they get whittled down to 20, and then we have the normal Eesti Laul final, where the final will have a super final in there as well. So that will be remaining entrenched within the Eesti Laul system, I guess. So I know it definitely sounds as if there needs to be some other sort of tweaks to the format. But I'm kind of interested to see how it's going to go, obviously, because you can tell that Estonia is very much like trying to keep up their string of somewhat good results. We're not going to include Uku in this just because they were choices. Let's just put it that way. And you know what? It's great to see that, there are still people who are still trying to come back from that. I must say, I mean, this is just my own personal opinion, but I find that Eesti Laul is one of the highest quality national finals of the national final season. So when you have other songs come through, for example, in the 21-21 contest, we had Time, which came second. I would have much rather have that instead of Uku, but because it comes down to televoting only in the super final, should I say, it kind of means that it's a popularity contest, essentially. We also have Tartu, who was a phenomenal song. If you've been listening to our news podcasts before, you will know that is my favorite song of Eesti Laul 2021. Jazzy is probably writhing as she's listening to this. But yeah, I think what do you think should be done to sort of bring back that kind of success, or to carry it on? Do you think that maybe they should sing in Estonian? Do you think they should sort of go a little bit more experimental, like with something like Tartu, or do you think that they should sort of stick to and I'm going to be very controversial here, I know Tim's going to hate me this, but like with the sort of Melfest rejects, essentially? Like, as in case you don't know what's going on right now, he is just shaking his head, just being like, oh my God, Rory, you are making some very poor life choices.
I mean, from my perspective, I'm always up for more experimental entries, genres in Eurovision, in national finals. I'm never going to be upset by that. Like, even if I don't necessarily like every song that's going to come out of it, I at least have a lot of respect for them, particularly for people who do go and do new things and do try interesting styles and themes and messages and ways of presenting them.
Yeah, I agree. I'm never going to get mad at a country because they try something different, because it'll at least break up the typical pop songs in the running order, so you won't have to be stuck with that. But I mean, sometimes it might be scary for the broadcaster to experiment, because they've seen in the past really doesn't work out. Like 2019 with Portugal, like that was an experiment, but then it ended up like it was a good song, but it didn't do very well because it was so different and it was an experiment. So it might scare the broadcasters away from doing that, and I hope it doesn't, because I think if you experiment, you have a chance of doing really well because you will stand out from everyone else. But I'd also like to see them sing in Estonian, as I've already said, but I think that's a good way to stand out too, because I think once it comes to the final, it's all about standing out, being different, not blending in with everyone else.
For me, I'm still shaking off the Melfest reject comment by Rory there. Look, they're doing the right things, but it's the one little thing, aka the super final, that's ruining this. So it does work. They get the entries correct. They're just selecting the wrong ones. So the one way to get rid of that, get rid of the super final, judge them both 50-50, because that's the only way this is going to work. Like, you get some amazing entries from Estonia. You get some amazing entries from Eesti Laul. Artists have very high caliber, and I'm impressed each year. But it's the way they select them that's a bit... I mean, it's their choice, not mine. It's their participation, and it's the cost of their participation. And, you know, if you want to get your bang buck out of there, like, do the right thing, get the professionals in there. But I understand why they're doing the super final, because at the end of the day, Estonian taxpayers pay, like, you know, the ETV's participation. So you gotta follow with them, and I think it's a big rating success for them. So yay if they make the final, but if they don't, then at least they made a good show out of it. And, you know, the artists enjoyed the journey.
Yeah, the thing is, I guess it's the poor Estonian taxpayer has to pay for so much in order to actually enjoy Eurovision, because in order to vote in Eesti Laul, you have to pay about roughly €2.50, I think it is now, which is horrendous, which is per vote. I don't know how much it is when you actually pay in the actual contest. It's ridiculous, let's just put it that way. I think, you know, I am the resident weird listening person on this podcast and on the team. So, of course, I'm going to love it with that. You know, we're going to get random styles of songs and everything like that. For example, Parmumeng in 2019 was by far and away the best song in any national final selection I've ever heard. It makes extensive use, should I say, of jaw harps and loop pedals, and that is my shit. I bought 2 jaw harps purely to try and recreate it. That is how much I'm into it. Yeah, so, you know, they have something so left field, and then they somehow just manage to change, like, the way that they do it just ends up meaning that all of this quality ends up being for nothing, but when it just sort of gets turned into something relatively generic or something like that. So, of course, I'm looking forward to having more experimentation from them. I would much rather see that than, you know, it's taking a risk, isn't it? It's trying to make sure that, yeah, they're actually going to do something different. And, you know what, you might flop doing it sometimes, you might succeed doing it sometimes. You know, like, we're in this period now where musical individuality is very much respected. So we need to sort of encourage that more within Estonia and sort of get that going within the Estonian public, I would say. Which leads me nicely on to last couple questions. Who would you like to see representing Estonia? Either a past participant who's been in Eesti Laul, a past participant who's actually been to the contest, or anyone new? If you have any suggestions.
So I have 2 names. The first of which is Jiri Putzman. I know a lot of people think Play was quite hard done by at the contest, and I am one of those people. But I also think what he sent to the most recent Eesti Laul with Megas Melancholia was something so different and something so interesting. And I'm not even sure I actually liked it that much, but I really respected it. And it was so different to anything else in any national final that I'd really like to see more of his more recent stuff and to see how that would do at the contest again. And then the other one I would really like to see, who has done Eesti Laul a few times, and I've fallen in love with every single one of his entries and never quite seemed to get to the top, is Eget Mulder. Georgia on My Mind and Free Again, both really beautiful jazz folk songs. They're not even that experimental, but they are definitely more sort of genre songs. And I think even just going in that direction would be an interesting change for Estonia. And I just think his voice and his lyrics are absolutely lovely. And I would really, really like to see him finally get onto the Eurovision stage.
Yeah, so I was actually also, I mean, the only one I could really think of was Yuri Pusnin, because I did like his song last year. It was probably honestly my favorite song from last year, and then it didn't win, but he has participated in Eurovision before, and it kind of be like a redemption story for him, come back and do super well. And I think I'd always love to see that, see someone who didn't do well the first time come back and do really good. This song last year was in Estonian. Bring that to the Eurovision stage. I think that would be cool and fun for everyone.
For me, I have three, but I'll go through them quickly. First one, Curly. I'm one of those that got really annoyed at Spirit Animal lost out. I still don't get how Lauren Coit got about 20,000 plus votes ahead of Curly. It still baffles me to this day, and it's very annoying me. Second, if it's a returning artist we're talking about, I want Alina Born to come back. In or Out was a bop. And y'all paid it dirt by putting it like dead loss. Like, why? It was very frustrating. But the third one, another upcoming artist, Sissy. She was very lovely. Her vocals are so lovely. And every time she's saying this heaven. And I wouldn't be surprised if she's on the list for this year's competition. So by the time this gets recorded, she might have been revealed. But either or of those three, they would be nice to see them. More women. That's basically what I'm hitting at.
Yeah, I have to agree with Cece. She's a phenomenal singer. I must say, I didn't like her song in 2019. I did think it was a bit meh. But like Time is one of the songs that I have just gone back to time and time again. And, you know, the fact that she's the daughter of Dave Benton as well would just be such a beautiful character arc as well. It's like, oh, like father, like daughter almost, you know, which would be so lovely. Again, I would love to see Caitlin Meggie go back because she's the jaw harp one. And I really want her. I want her back ASAP. Please come back. I also would really like to see Laura Prietz as well. She was in Ziggy Wild, which was a sort of rock / American folk band that was in Eesti Laul in 2020. And she did all right, but I would like to see her do something more on her own because she has such a phenomenal voice. I think it would just look so good for her. And then as well as that, I have to say, they were I think the best way of describing them are the two backing singers that appear for Estonia every single year for Estonia. They tried to go this year as their own band called Sure Tudrukud, I think is how you pronounce it. And that song was twee as hell, but it was so good and they deserve their moment. Honestly, they've been backups for so long. They deserve their own moment. Obviously, I also have to give shout outs to Curly, to Yuri Portsman, to, you know what? I would be all right with Sandra coming back because like all of the songs that she's sort of come up with beforehand have been very good. Like Tobi de Poo, Kuitulet Purdovad, and then of course, you know, Randayat as well. So there's just so many good artists in Estonia. And I think they just need, if I could have like 50 representatives for Estonia in 1 year, then I would have them all, basically. But yeah, so that would just be lovely. But we'll see how we get on. And yeah, just to sort of like close things off, I guess, is what would you like to see from Estonia in the coming year? Obviously, this is being recorded again, just to refresh anyone, this is being recorded before the next sort of few quarterfinals come out, so we don't know anything about who's representing Estonia or who's in contention or whatever. So who would you like, or like what would you like to see from Estonia this year?
A little bit more experimentation. And the one thing that I might be getting my hopes up for, that I'm not 100% sure if I'm right on this or not, but I think, given the fact we've got songs in Italian and 7 previous Eurovision contestants having submitted, I think Alina Netjayeva might be coming back. And I, for one, am here for it. I would like to see that.
I also say more experimentation. I mean, I think the last 3 entries have been pretty typical songs that aren't very different from the norm. So I think experimenting would bring new types of music to the contest, but also could bring Estonia a better result than maybe what they've been hoping for. And singing Estonian, that too. I've said that a lot, but
for me, something different, because I think the past like three entries, like no offense to Victor or Uku, I think they've just been a bit generic. I love Storm. I'm a basic person, so I'll take that. But I just think something different and something fresh or something like that hasn't been heard. So the experimentation thing. And Estonian is such a beautiful language. I wouldn't be surprised if they send it. But, you know, we are going to Turin, and Italian is on that list of languages. Might be a way to get 24 points from Italy. So why not?
It is a possibility, although I have noticed that several other countries are also saying things like, you can send a song in English, the national language, or if you want to chuck in one in Italian as well, we won't say no to that. So it could be a bit of a thing where there could be a lot of Italian songs this year, and we'll be a little bit spoiled for choice. It'll be like Sanremo all over again. But yeah, I think for me, I'm really looking forward to just a whole new list of new artists that we will not have heard of before. Some of the famouses coming back again. That would also be really, really nice. And I think as well, just in general, we'll be getting a lot more fun, I think. I think Estonia is what we're kind of like, they're known for the kind of serious things, but I feel like we're kind of in the moment where they kind of need to push themselves out of their comfort zone for a while, I think. So maybe we might get something like that, but I'm not entirely sure. Don't hold me to that. Watch it probably now. There'll all be 40 really safe songs, and we'll all just be very depressed by the end of this episode. So we'll see. Anyway, do we have any sort of final points on Estonia just before we wrap things up?
I'd just like to point out what Lewis said to me this morning when I was sat listening through all of the songs. And there was one song to which he said, this should have been disqualified in principle. And that song was Storm by Victor Crone. And the reason for the principle was it rhymes. A storm like this can break a man like this. I say no more.
I can see where he's coming from, and I totally agree.
Victor Crone is awesome. He did that so well in the effects in Tel Aviv. They worked so hard on that. But with Estonia, you're doing well and you're finding the right foundations. Just keep going.
I'm sorry, Tim, but I agree with them on Victor Crone and Storm. I'm sorry, but I mean, the whole Storm effect, that was cool, but I don't think it made up for everything else. But yeah, Estonia, you're doing great. Just sometimes maybe you need a little help here and there, but I think you'll eventually get there.
Yeah, I think it's all just a case of waiting to see what works. But they have such great variety in Eesti Laul that I'm sure something will work overall for it. So I'm not holding my breath that something bad is going to happen anytime soon. So it'll be fine. Anyway, so with all of that said, that takes us to the end of this edition of that Eurovision podcast. I'd really like to thank Colin, Rosie, and Tim just for floating ourselves up to Tallinn and having a great fun in the Sakusur Hall and all of that. I dread to think where the contest could be held other than the Sakusur Hall again if they manage to host it, because that place is small. So I don't know how it will work. Maybe they might need to build another arena, a bit like Azerbaijan, but we'll see. But yeah, in the meantime, please follow us on all of our social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at That Euro Site. We're also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and YouTube as well. So follow us, subscribe to us, like us, all of that jazz. And yes, we will be sort of continuing this on. We might end up needing to sort of reduce the number of podcasts that we're doing because we will be doing more streams as well. So, you know, we'll be doing sort of monthly and then weekly reviews of what's going on in the Eurovision world as sort of national final season starts to kick off. So I'm excited, and I don't know if you guys are excited, but I'm excited. But yeah, so shall we all say goodbye?
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.